Most plugins are more or less the same. For example, this Isotope Vintage Tape plugin includes the basic features that you'd expect. A few tape speeds, a controllable saturation threshold, the amount of distortion, and a couple EQ filters are all you'll get, and are likely features that you're going to find in just about any tape plugin. However, after testing hundreds of plugins, I've noticed some have incredibly unique features, ones that you can rarely, if ever, find in other plugins, making these plugins a lot more valuable if you're interested in having your production stand out. So, let's cover the rarest audio plugin features and where to find them. First, we have nonlinear post-threshold compression. So all audio compression is nonlinear. Once the threshold is crossed, the output no longer has a linear relationship to the input. A 3-to-1 ratio means the output's dB is 1/3 the input once the threshold is crossed. But what about the range above the threshold? A soft knee is the only option for almost all plugins if you want some variance in the output post-threshold. But Presswork by Yuhi offers something different. The nonlinear function allows the user to reshape the output post-threshold, meaning we can essentially include multiple thresholds with multiple ratios and varying knees. For example, if I use a hard knee setting with a high ratio and make the nonlinear function negative, I can create gradual soft knee compression, followed by expansion, followed by hard knee compression. Or if I use a soft knee and a positive value for the nonlinear function, I can completely change the value of the peaks relative to the RMS or average loudness. Now from there, I can experiment with the ratio, threshold, knee, and nonlinear settings to create incredibly unique compression that simply isn't possible with almost every other compressor plugin. Now this plugin offers other unique functions like dual phase rotation, which acts like a dynamic EQ band on the low frequencies, or a unique combination of feedback and feed-forward detection. However, the nonlinear function is by far the most useful, especially if you want to emulate unique behavior of analog gear or just create a distinct sound when you're compressing. So let's take a listen to a typical compressor and compare it to this Presswork plugin while varying the nonlinear function. Notice how much the sound can vary. Next up, let's discuss modulating and customizable filtering. So with most equalizers, if you want any modulation, you'd need to automate the effect or use a dynamic filter that only modulates the amplitude in a very predictable way. However, one EQ has incorporated multiple forms of modulation and allows the user to attach a modulator to just about any parameter. Shade by Yuhi is perhaps the most flexible EQ out there, but hardly anybody uses it. It's easier to show its effect than describe it, so let's take a look at an example. Say I create a typical bell filter. Right now it's static, it doesn't change, it will always amplify the frequency range that I set it to and by the amount that I set it to. But let's add a modulator. So say I add the random option and I link it to the center frequency. Now the center frequency is randomized as the bell filter moves around the frequency spectrum. For a more practical effect, I could reduce the rate and the depth. If I want mild fluctuation between the left and right channels, I could enable the stereo effect. By hovering over the relevant parameter, I can adjust the range. So say I only want the frequency to fluctuate by 20 Hz. I could adjust the range until that's controlled exactly how I want. Now the same goes for the filter's amplitude, slope, and width. Now you might wonder why you'd want to do this. Well, in short, a lot of expensive plugins add mild modulation to make the sound more complex. The subtle shifting of the filter's frequency or amplitude can go a long way in making the sound more interesting to both engineers and listeners. So whether you're interested in introducing creative effects or making very subtle shifts to add some complexity to your mixes and masters, this plugin, Shade, offers this incredibly rare feature. Now, I only covered the randomize function, but as you can see, there are 9 other filters that you can experiment with. For now, let's compare some static filters introduced with the Pro Q3 to the same filters but with mild modulation. Notice how the modulation creates a more interesting and complex sound. Next up, let's discuss distortion-free compression. So compression distorts a signal. By changing the peaks, the waves are shaped, resulting in harmonics. Now, it's not a bad thing, but sometimes you want to compress a signal while altering the original timbre as little as possible. Now, a while back, I spent some time looking for the cleanest compressor, the one that adds as little distortion as possible, and I think I found it. Compressor version 4 by Tone Boosters has one algorithm that, no matter what I compare it to, remains the cleanest compression. Even when I'm attenuating a signal by 20 dB or more, harmonics are kept to a minimum. Even with look-ahead off, harmonics aren't audible. The reason this compressor can achieve this is by using a unique form of FFT processing called the Hilbert transform, in which phase rotation allows for more accurate amplitude measurement. By measuring the input more accurately, it could be attenuated more accurately without the need for wave shaping peaks, or at least as little wave shaping as possible. So if you want clean compression, try the punch algorithm of this compressor. The plugin can be downloaded and used for free without any limitations, so let's compare this compressor to a stock compressor. Notice how much cleaner the signal sounds post-compression when I use the punch algorithm from compressor 4. Again, distortion isn't a bad thing. The stock plugin might sound better for this instance, but keep in mind that I'm showing which one changes the timbre less. Real quick, Sage Audio is an all-analog mastering service. We've been around for 20 years, and mastering starts at $49 per track. There's a link in the description and an ad at the end of the video if you want to learn more about it. Next up, let's cover intelligent demasking through amplification. So temporal masking and attempting to control it is a big part of recording, mixing, and mastering. When a loud sound occurs like a transient, it often masks or covers up what comes after it. The most common way to combat this is by attenuating the loud sound. For example, we compress and then amplify a snare to reduce the peak and then bring up quieter details, or we saturate to square the peak and create harmonics that amplify quieter aspects of the signal, both of which require reducing the peak before making any change. But rarely, if ever, does a processor measure the frequencies that would mask a signal and then amplifies the masked signal as a response. That's what happens with the recover function of the Gullfoss EQ. Whereas a similar processor like Soothe 2 will attenuate peaks and subsequently alter the behavior of transients, Gullfoss could be used to amplify the ranges that would be masked if they were kept at a lower amplitude. So, let's listen to a drum stem with its peaks compressed and quieter details amplified to reduce masking. Then, we'll listen to the recover function of the Gullfoss EQ. Notice how masking is reduced in both, but that the Gullfoss EQ alters transients less than the compressor. Last up, let's cover the tremor feature of Sweet Spot. So I debated including this one since it's so strange. Also, it kept crashing Plugin Doctor when I was trying to test it. But Sweet Spot by Pulsar Modular does have a one-of-a-kind feature called tremor. It's not too complex, but it doesn't really exist in any other plugin. In short, it's a bell filter that amplifies 7.83 Hz. Why exactly? Well, because that's the resonance of the Earth rotating on its axis. Why would you want to include that frequency? Honestly, I'm not sure. But at the very least, it's a frequency that can vary, giving you a lot of control over the sub-frequencies of your mix. For example, if you're working on a dance track and you want to amplify the sub, but tune it to the sub-octave of the kick, you could find that with this plugin. Other plugins are going to cut you off at 20 Hz, maybe 10 Hz, but if you want that level of control, this plugin makes it possible. So let's take a listen to the tremor effect. You'll need some headphones in order to hear it, but let me know in the comments if you think this feature does anything worthwhile. Get professional analog mastering that accurately translates what you hear in your head. Seriously though, when people work with us, they get results. That's why major industry professionals like Keith Urban's producer Aaron Schurz works with us, Grammy award-winning AJ Castillo, Billboard #1 charted artist Megan Lindsay, Grammy award-winning artist Tulis, The Voice singer Cody Ballou, Grammy-nominated producer Tyler Kane, Warner Music artist Ricky Young, and the list goes on. Why waste your time creating masters that don't accurately translate what you hear in your head when you could instantly fix a problem by clicking the link in the description and working directly with professionals who have already done what you're trying to do. We've mastered thousands of songs that accurately translate what each client hears in their head, and it'll work for you too. Click the link in the description now and get direct access to us for personalized analog mastering that accurately translates what you hear in your head.